is those living particles which have perpetual motion flows back to the mind of God, and they work through the substance and substratum of matrices of space-time, and they have space-time rhythms, and they have certain purpose for expression and experiences, and building a memory. To build a memory of real experiences that are existing with God's mind. And there's also the other mind, which is not a mind at all really, it's like a mentality of separation. And those minds are also shared as a veil against the living structures of light. But they have those separated thoughts have no connection to God's source, and so they can only perpetuate themselves in a state of decay. And where societies have built up in a state of decay, even though they have a residual amount of energy within the structure, they're in a state of implosion, and so they would normally, those particles of consciousness or illusion would gradually decay themselves and fall down into a state of total return to God's source through the back door, so to speak. They would become particles of consciousness with no memory or no real identity attached to them. They just become like space dust. So societies have been set up with a large percentage of vain imaginations or alienated thought. They would be in a state of decay. And this is what we've discovered, that they can coexist. Like part of our body is living structure. It is connected to God's source. But part of our body also, being implanted in our mind from those who are separated, also exists within our structure as a projection. And so we are overall in ourselves separated from God, but we have some structure which is perpetuating itself. That's like our soul structure, our spirit structure. It's connected to God. It's trying to incarnate into the flesh, to convert the flesh to a living substance. So the flesh mentality would be those particles of consciousness which are in a state of decay, in degeneration, and our spirit, which incarnates into our anatomy time and time again, trying to incarnate the word of truth into our own awareness of what our body-mind is. Our body-mind is a sense of self, but it's a false sense of self in a state of decay. We're trying to incarnate the true Christed awareness of ourselves in through the gateways of the atomic structure, to regenerate the atomic structure, to overcome the burden of the body and the death that has so overtaken us through space-time. So, you can look at it that way, that Jesus incarnated the word of truth. The Bible says, "For this cause came I into the world, to bear witness to truth." So Jesus only came into the world to bear witness to truth. And that Christ in him, that he knew was him, he let that come in and confront every other thought that was in his body structure. He let that mind of God be known to himself again. And when we do that, of course, every other thought in our mind, in our body-mind computation of the biological computer, is going to be challenged, because it's going to raise it to question. And if we can do that now in this space-time, if we can let that mind of Christ be in us and challenge every thought that's in the structure, that's not that, it's a dead light structure, a dead, slow, unregenerated, disconnected kind of light. If we let those be regenerated, so we're going to regenerate the dark light, because they are still made of God particles but disconnected. So we're going to find a way to reconnect those slow, dead light energy structures that drag us back to death and back to dust continuously. And so that's the atomic regeneration or transfiguration that we're here to learn about. And it's a matter of, I feel, knowing the multidimensional structure that supports all life everywhere in creation, where God's source works through all time matrices to know itself as all of us, as everything. That it would be a myriad form of expression in space-time continuums, in matter densities, in constructs of awareness. God is knowing itself through all things, but it can't know itself in those parts which are disconnected. And so those parts which are disconnected can reconnect. There's a process in reconnecting. It's just like dissolving part of the structure which is false and transmuting it into a reconnective process where the atomic structure can regenerate itself and reshape itself into a high form of mind. In actual fact, when you've regenerated the body, you turn back to that full source of mind where you're not working in any structure at all. But the process seems to be to return to that whole mind that is outside of time. There has to be a working through the corridors of time to regenerate those structures of consciousness that abide in time as many different elemental configurations. Like I spoke last time about three-dimensionality. Like we're in the three dimensions here, dimensions 1, 2 and 3. And when we go to the next harmonic universe up, we go to dimensions 4, 5 and 6. Well, in that next dimension up, it's a much higher bass pulse rhythm of communication of what communicates within the particles of consciousness of light and sound, electrotonal frequencies. Electric magnetic is called expansion, contraction, or you might say vibration and oscillation. So when I spoke about the first particle of consciousness, which is called a partikai, when it replicates itself and makes like another form of itself, still within itself, and then it replicates, it expands out as two particles. So you've got the original main one, makes another main one the same. That main one that has just been formed then splits into two, which is one is called a partikai, one is called a particum, and it's a particle universe and antiparticle universe, and then they flip back into the original particle and back into the one that formed them, and then out the other side again. So we're getting a particle of consciousness that as it splits from one and replicates itself, then that replicant splits into two. It's called fission or expansion, this oscillation of light, and it flashes on, it becomes a light signal. And then when it contracts back into the one that brought it about, it's called contraction or vibration, and it's a sound. It's a sound signature. So you have light and sound signatures, expansion and contraction, or what we call vibration and oscillation. When we have a high vibration, it's a very dense object. So the atoms would have their electrons spinning very, very fast vibration of electron spin around the axis of the atom, and it's compacting the core encryption of the atom into a very tight shell. It's a very fast vibration. High vibration is density. Now this is very contradicting to what most New Age teaching is. People say, oh, we're going to raise our vibration. No, you're going to raise your oscillation. Oscillation is a collapse of the wave function. So it's the release of potential. So a high vibration is a density, and it signifies a very high potential to be experienced, to be released, to be brought forth out into expression in the awareness of consciousness. So you have light and sound, and those differentials are held in a ratio between themselves according to what's going on in conjunction with the elemental structures. So we're going to be bringing elements into play here, where different elements have different vibration, oscillation rates and intermingling rates where they work together. So matter itself, it becomes evident that matter is consciousness, and it has different densities, and it can be transfigured by migrating the consciousness or the bass pulse rhythm. So the bass pulse rhythm would be the overall frequency. So if we're going from harmonic universe 1, which is dimensions 1, 2, 3, to harmonic universe 2, which is dimensions 4, 5 and 6, if we're migrating our consciousness to the next harmonic universe up in frequency, that means that both vibration and oscillation will be frequencing at a higher bass pulse rhythm. Then, it's moving up as a faster computation. And of course, there's 4 main harmonic universes, which are really like matter universes, before we get into a primal light and sound field construct. And the primal light and sound field construct reaches out to undifferentiated God source, or that energy matrix, which is just undifferentiated. It flows through all sound fields, light fields, pre-matter liquid light, into different densities, right down to a density. So we're living in the density 1 universe,